Dear students, now we are going to discuss about photoperiodism. What is photoperiodism? Photoperiodism. Photo means light. Periodism means certain time. A day is consist of 24 hours. Within this 24 hours, certain hours need for a plant light. Certain period of time they need darkness. So all the plants need not only light but also they need darkness. So this light as well as dark will be combined together. They need, each and every plants they need a certain times for lightness, certain period for darkness. Such a type of condition is called as photoperiodism. If this photoperiodism is available in plant, they can able to flower. So the flowering is a physiological process which will be done with the help of a specialized physiological phenomena which is called as photoperiodism. So if you see some of the tree like plants can take several years for initiation of flowering, whereas some of the annual plants like small herbs, they can able to flower within few months. So each and every plants require a specific time period to complete their vegetative phase, which will be followed by the reproductive phase. So as per their internal control point through the biological clock. So the physiological mechanism in relation to flowering are controlled by light period, that is called photoperiodism. Suppose some of the plants need, they can enable to get 16 hours they need light. Then remaining 8 hours they might be need in dark. So this is a particular photoperiod for a particular plant. So each and every plants, they might not have same photoperiod for each and every plants to blooming the flower. So this will be depends upon the different kinds of plants. So what happened? This photoperiod will be first discovered, this was discovered by, the term photoperiodism was coined by Garner and Allard in the year 1920. Actually, the physiological change on flowering due to the relative length of the light and darkness is called photoperiodism. So, photoperiodism is nothing but it is a physiological change in which on flowering due to the relative length of the light as well as darkness is called photoperiodism. This was explained by Garner and Allard. Then later this was observed, this in Philoxy variety of soybean, that is Lysine max, as well as Maryland and Mammoth variety of tobacco, Nicotiana tabacum plant. So each and every plant, they have a certain period required to induce flowering. This is called critical day length. So each and every plant, they need a critical length of light. So this is called critical day length. On the basis of depending upon the photoperiodic responses, plants are classified into 6 different types of plants. Some of the plants, they need more critical daylight. That means they require for a long critical day length for a flowering. These are called as long day plant. For example, barley, oats, these are comes under long day plant. Some of the plant like wheat and rye, they are also long day plant, but they should expose to a short day length during early period of young plant. When they were a small sapling, they have to be exposed for a long day, for a short while. Later on they will become, short day, and later on they will become long day. Such a type of plants are called a short long day plant. On the other hand, some of the plants like soya bean, rice, chrysanthemum, tobacco, cacliber, such a type of plants, these plants require a very short critical day length for a flowering. These plants may be called a short day plant. Some of the short day plant like some plant like night jasmine, bryophyllum, These plants are short day plant, but they have to be exposed to a long day during their early periods of growth for flowering. Such a type of plants are called as long short day plant. So, long day plant, short long day plant, short day plant, long short day plants. So, 4 different types of plants so far we discussed. Now we are going to see the 5th type of photoperiodic plant is intermediate day plant. So these require the photoperiod between long day and short day. For example, sugarcane, coleus, such a type of plants they need intermediate between long day and short day. These plants will be called as intermediate day long plant. Apart from this, one more plant is there. They are called as day neutral plant. So there are number of plants which can flower all possible period. That means they never be affected by either long exposure of light or short exposure of light. So never affected by the critical length of the period. Such a type of plants will be called as day neutral plant. Some of the plants like potato, rhododendron, tomato, cotton, these are all comes under this category. Now we are going to see about a new concept is called photoperiodic induction. What is photoperiodic induction? So photoperiodic induction is nothing but an appropriate photoperiod is 24 hours. The 24 hours cycle constitutes one inductive cycle. That means a plant may require one or more inductive cycles for flowering. On the basis of number of inductive period for a flowering plant, then we can differentiate in various categories. The phenomenon of conversion of leaf primordia into flower primordia. That means the leaf or vegetative birds will be converted into reproductive birds. That means flowering birds. Under the influence of certain suitable inductive cycle is called as photoperiodic induction. For example, xanthium plant is short day plant. They need one inductive cycle. Some of the long day plant like plantago, they need 25 inductive cycles for flowering. So, the number of inductive cycle is also very important for each and every plant. Next one we can explain about site of photoinductive perception. In which part of the plant will be the site for the photoperiodic induction. So in plant generally leaves are the site for photoinductive perception. So photoperiodic stimulus is perceived by the leaves. So certain floral hormone is synthesized on the leaves and it is translocated to the apical tip of the plant and promote flowering. This can be explained by a simple experiment. Some of the plant like cockleburrs, that is Xanthium pennsylvanicum. So if you see the plant like Xanthium pennsylvanicum, so in this plant we can explain about a site of photosynthetic effect. Look at this picture. This will help you to understand about how the Xanthium plant can exposing about the site of photosynthesis. Actually, Xanthium plant is a short day plant. Usually, the Xanthium will flower under short day conditions. Suppose, if the plant is defoliated, that means if you remove all the leaves from the plant, then there is no flower will be formed. But on the other hand, if you defoliate all the plants of Xanthium, if you expose a short day condition, but if you remove all the leaves except one leaf, that means we can leave only one leaf at any place of the plant. You can remove the remaining all the leaves. Then if you expose the short day condition on this leaf, then what will happen? After some times, we can observe that the plant will be blooming the flower. That means the flowering will be controlled by this particular photoinductive induction which will be received by the leaves. So if you remove all the leaves, even though if you are exposing the short day condition on the plant, in the second picture you can see. So you can remove all the leaves. So there is no flowering at all. But in the condition of C, only one leaf is left. If you are exposing the short day condition of the Xanthium plant, which they can able to blooming the flower. Then if you are using the same Xanthium plant for a long day exposure. Suppose if you are exposing for a long day condition, then the plant will not be blooming the flower. Then you can remove all the leaves, you can defoliate the leaves, then expose a long day plant. That time also they won't blooming the flower. Then you can keep another plant like F. In this plant, except one leaf, remaining all the leaves you can expose with long day condition. Only one leaf you can expose with short day condition. Then the plant will be blooming the flower. But if you are exposing all the leaves of the plant by long day condition, they won't bloom. They won't flowering at all. But if you expose with all the leaf except one leaf, that leaf if you are exposing with short day condition, they can bloom. So that what is the condition? So each and every plant they need a particular critical condition. If you are giving that particular condition on the leaf, they can able to give this flowering. So this is the site of photoperiodic condition. Next we are going to see about phytochrome. So what is phytochrome? So phytochrome is a specialized pigment. Look at this picture. So phytochrome is a blue color pigment, or that is called as bilirubin. So bilirubin pigment responsible for the perception of light in photophysiological process. This was explained by Butler and et al. In the year 1959. Named this pigment. So it is exists in two interconvertible forms. There are two forms are available about this phytochrome. One is in red light. That means these pigment of the plant which can able to absorb the red color light, which are designated as PR. R is indicating red color wavelength. So they can able to absorb the red color wavelength around 630 nanometer. Then what happened? Another form is far red condition, which are absorbing the pigment which is designated as PFR. P is indicating phytochrome, FR indicating far red. The previous one, P indicating phytochrome, the R indicating the red wavelength of light will be absorbed. So it is very interesting to see that. The PR, that is phytochrome red form, absorb the red wavelength of light, that is 660 nanometer, and change into PFR, that is phytochrome far red. Then the PFR forms absorb the far red wavelength, that is 730 nanometer, and that will be changed into PR. So the PR forms are biologically inactive and it is stable, whereas PFR forms biologically active and is very unstable as well. So it is very clearly evidence that in short day plant, the PR promotes flowering. So PR means phytochrome red can able to promote flowering, but on the other hand, PFR in short day condition they won't flower. That means they can inhibit the flowering condition. Whereas in long day plant, flowering is promoted by PFR and inhibited by PFR. So PFR is always associated with hydrophobic area membrane systems. Why? PR is found in diffused state in the cytoplasm. So this is called as phytochrome. So phytochrome is also another important concept. Now we are going to see about vernalization. So vernalization is temperature control of the plant. So it is another one important concept. Apart from this photoperiodism, many species of biennial and perennial plants. Biennial means 2 years plant. Perennial means the plants which can survive for many years. They are called as perennial plants. Are induced the flower by the low temperature. That means if they are exposing to 0 degree Celsius to 5 degree Celsius, then they can able to flower. This process is called as vernalization. This term vernalization was coined by, first used by, a Russian scientist was called as T.D. Lysenko in the year 1938. So this is called as vernalization. So vernalization process which will be done in two mechanisms, that is hypothesis of phasic development and hypothesis of hormonal involvement. What is hypothesis of basic development? According to Lysenko, development of an annual seed plant consists of two phases. That is, first phase is thermostage and the second phase is photostage. The first phase is thermostage, which is vegetative phase requiring low temperature and suitable moisture. This condition is called thermostage. But in the next phase, photostage, which require high temperature for the synthesis of florigin. Florigin is a flowering hormone. So this is a mechanism of hypothesis for phasic development. Another hypothesis of the hypothesis of hormonal involvement. So the flowering will be induced or influenced or stimulated by a flowering hormone called florigin. According to Purvis in the year 1961, formation of a substance. Look at this picture. This will be helping you to understand about this hormonal involvement. For example, the formation of a substance A. From A, its precursor is converted into B. So A is converted into B after chilling. That means if you are keeping A is kept under chilling, then it is producing B. The substance B is unstable. They will be converted into another form. At a suitable particular temperature, the B is converted into a stable compound D called vernalin. So vernalin is one kind of hormone. These vernalin is further converted into F, that is florigin. So florigin is a flowering hormone. Do you understand? A substance present in a leaf A will be converted into B by chilling. That means if you are making under condition of cooling. When the cool condition, A will be converted into B. And moreover, B is unstable. They will not be changed. So they will be oftenly changed. That is called unstable. So during this unstable condition, at one occasion, at one temperature, the B will be converted into D. The D is called vernalin. Then finally, the vernalin D will be converted into F. That is called florigin. So florigin is a flowering hormone. If the florigin is produced, they can induce the flowering formation. Suppose the B is already unstable, I told you that. If the B at high temperature, the B is converted into C. That means devernalization. Devernalization means it is high temperature which is making that plant will not bloom flower. So very important. At the B condition, there is a substance will be formed. If it is high temperature, that is devernalized, they cannot be able to bloom. Suppose if it is cold condition, if it is analyzed in the cold condition, they can be able to produce a form of D, that is called vernalin. Then this vernalin will be converted into F, that is florigin. The florigin is a hormone, a flowering hormone. If the florigin is synthesized, immediately the flower will be bloom. So this is called a hypothesis of hormonal involvement. Next we are going to see about techniques of vernalization. How we can able to make a plant to vernalized. It is very easy techniques. So before the seed germination itself, we should do the process of technique of vernalization. The seeds are first soaked in water. Throughout the night we should immerse in water. Then that will be imbibed and allow the seeds to germinate at 10 degrees Celsius to 12 degrees Celsius. After germination, the seeds are After seed germination, the seed should be kept in a particular low temperature like 3 degrees Celsius to 5 degrees Celsius from few days to 30 days. So after 30 days, the germinated seeds after this treatment are allowed to dry, then sown. Then if you sown in the agricultural field, they can be able to produce a plant. Then the plant will show quick flowering when compared to the untreated control plant. So this is called the techniques of vernalization. So another process is called devernalization. Devernalization is a very simple method, just a reverse. That means if you heat the seed, once if it is make it 3 degrees Celsius to 5 degrees Celsius, afterwards then this will be converted into devernalized. That means the reversal of this effect of vernalization is called devernalization. Then what are the practical applications of vernalization? So vernalization shortens the vegetative period and induces the... Now we shall discuss about the practical application of vernalization. So usually if you are making a plant to vernalization, the vernalization will shorten the vegetative period and induces the plant to flower earlier. So it increases the cold resistance to the plant as well. It increases the resistance to the plant to fungal diseases. Plant breeding also can be speeded or accelerated. That's all about vernalization. So next concept is seed germination and dormancy. What is seed germination? If a seed is soaked in water, then if you place or sown in the soil, they can germinate a new plant. So this is called as seed germination. So the activation and growth of embryo from the seed into seedling during favorable conditions is called seed germination. There are two types of seed germinations are there. One is epigeal germination, another one is hypogeal germination. In order to understand about epigeal and hypogeal germination, we should know about a certain concept. Look at this picture. This is bean seed. So it is seed, it is germinated. So which are producing a root-like structure which is called as a radicle. So radicle later they can able to produce roots. In between the two cotyledons there is a small leaf-like structure is called plumule. This plumule later on will be developed into a shoot. So at the top of the plant which is showing shoot, at the lower part which is showing a root system. In between the middle there is two cotyledons are there. So above the cotyledon, the parts of the plant which is being above the cotyledon which are called as epicotyle. So part of the seedling which are being below the cotyledon until the root tip, these are called as hypocotyl. Very important. If you know this concept, then only we can able to understand. So the first seed germination diagram is epigeal germination. The lower part is called hypogeal germination. What is the differences between epigeal and hypogeal? Look at this picture. First one, in the bean plants. Look at this. The seeds are germinated. The cotyledon is open. Then the plant is uprooted. That means it is erected to the air. So if you see carefully, after the germination of seed, the cotyledons are being above the ground level. That means the hypocotyl is grow faster than the upper epicotyl. This type of germination is called hypogeal germination. Epigeal germination. The second category is called hypogeal germination. So in the piece, this is seed, it is germinated, it is forming root, then plumule is going away. Then another condition is the cotyledon is kept underground. The shoot is being aerial. That means the hypocotyl will not grow faster. But on the other hand, the epicotyl will be growing very faster than the hypocotyl. So this type of germination are called as hypogeal germination. So in the epigeal germination, cotyledons are being in the aerial. But in hypogeal germination, the cotyledons are kept underground. And moreover, in the epigeal germination, this hypocotyl will be growing faster than epicotyl. But in hypogeal germination, epicotyl will be growing faster than the hypocotyl. So this is the differences between both types of germination called epigeal germination and hypogeal germination. Now we are going to discuss about various factors affecting germination. So basically the factors will be divided into two types, namely external factors and internal factors. External factors like water, temperature, oxygen, light and soil condition. So whenever the water is increases, which can able to absorb and which can able to stimulate the enzyme which can able to digest the complex reserved food materials in the seed, then they can germinate faster. So water is very important factor which will be responsible for the germination. Then temperature. So at low temperature as well as high temperature, the germination is very slow. But optimum temperature between 25 degrees Celsius to 35 degrees Celsius is most suitable for germination. Then availability of oxygen is also very much important. So physiological requirement of germination most will be germinate with more amount of oxygen. So containing more than 20% of oxygen. So availability of oxygen is also make the germination is possible. So it is directly proportional about the amount of oxygen. Light is also doing an important role. There are some rare seeds which will be respond to light for germination, and these seeds said to be photoplastic. This soil condition is also very much essential for germination. So germination of the seed is natural habitat is influenced by soil conditions such as water holding capacity, mineral composition, and aeration of the soil is also responsible for the process of germination. Then some of the internal factors also. Internal factors like maturity of embryo, viability of the seed, dormancy of the seed. What is maturity of the embryo? So inside the cotyledon, if the embryo, if it is become immature, they cannot be able to germinate faster. So if the embryo is mature faster, the seeds can be able to germinate very faster. Then viability of the seed. If the seed is having capacity to germinate at what time, that is called viability. That means usually the seeds remain viable or living conditions only for a particular period. That period is called viable period. After the viable period, they cannot be able to germinate. So viability of the seed range from few days to more than 100 years sometimes. If you see some of the plant like lotus seeds, they are having viability more than 1,000 years. Even after 1,000 years, if you planting the lotus seed, they can germinate. So viability, on the other hand, some of the grass plant will be having only a few months. So depends upon the various types of plant. This viability of these seeds will be varied. So seeds germinate only within the period of viability. Next one is dormancy. What is called dormancy? So inside the seed, the viable plant might be present. So they can able to germinate only if they have become active. That means if the seed is coming outside from the seed, if you are sowing the seed on the soil, if the young plant or the sapling, if it is come out from the seeds, then the seed is germinate. On the other hand, if the seed is not germinate, this is called dormant. That means the seed is still sleeping. Presence of certain inhibitors like phenolic compound which are also inhibit the seed germination. Now how can we break the dormancy? Lot of method we can able to use. Scarification, impaction, stratification, alternating temperature and light which can use to break the dormancy. Certain mechanical treatment, there is chemical treatment like cutting or chipping hard tough seed coat to be removed by using any hard mechanism. And also we can use organic solvent to remove waxy or fatty substances or compounds are called scarification. Then impaction. In some seeds, water and oxygens are unable to penetrate inside through micropyle, because the micropyle, the whole like structure which are present in the seeds are called as micropyle. So this micropyle might be blocked by certain substances. So if we vigorously shake it, then this open, then water and various gases can able to enter. So this process is called impaction. So another method, stratification. The seeds of roses plant like apple, plum, peach, cherry will not germinate until they have been exposed to well aerated moisture condition under low temperature like 0 degrees Celsius to 10 degrees Celsius for weeks to months. Such a treatment is called stratification. Similarly, alternating temperature. Certain germination of some seeds are very strongly promoted by alternating daily temperature, high temperature, low temperature. Then if you are waving, if you are changing the temperature, and alternating low and high temperature improves the germination of seed. So light is also helping to break the dormancy. So dormancy of photoplastic seeds can be broken by exposing them with sunlight. Now we are going to see another concept is called as senescence. Senescence means maturity of the plant. So whenever the plant becomes mature, then the leaves become pale yellow. So that is called as senescence. This senescence can be explained in detail. So usually the plant life comprises some sequential events like germination. After germination, the young plant will be developed into a juvenile stage. Then afterwards maturation stage, then old age stage, finally the death of the plant. So the old age is called senescence in plants. So senescence refer to all collective, progressive and deteriorative process which ultimately lead to the complete loss of organization and function. Unlike animals, plants are continuously form a new organs and older organs are replaced under a highly regulated senescence program to be maximize nutrient export. So there are four different types of senescence are there. Overall senescence, top senescence, deciduous senescence and progressive senescence. Look at the picture. These are showing various types of senescence. The first picture is showing overall senescence. When the plants are gradually grown up, when they are become maturity, all plants at a time they can able to die. These are called as overall senescence. So most probably the entire plant get affected and dies. These most probably annual plants or seasonal plants will be having this type of conditions like wheat, soya bean. So it is also occurring in some of the perennial plant also like bamboo and agave as well. Then top senescence. So some of the subterranean plant, that means some of the plants which can able to alive underground. So top of the plant, the shoot part will be dried up. But even though the underground part like a rhizome, still it is alive. So whenever the favorable condition again, if it is produced, they can germinate. So that means it is a partial senescence. So it is occur in aerial part of the plant. It is common in perennial underground and root system remains viable. Some of the plant like banana and gladiolus which will be following this type of top senescence. So some of the deciduous senescence. So deciduous senescence is a common in deciduous plants and occurs only in leaves plants. So bulk of the stem and the root system remain alive, but leaves are falling one after one due to maturity. So once again after the certain season the leaves are reform again. A certain plant like elm, maple, these plants are having deciduous senescence. And the fourth type of senescence is progressive senescence. In this kind of senescence, it is a gradual senescence. First it is occurs in the old leaves, then followed by new leaves, then stem and finally root system. So step by step progressive method of senescence occur. So it is common in annual plants. Now we are going to see about factors affecting senescence. What are the factors which will be responsible? Abscisic acid and ethylene accelerate senescence. That means the senescence will be stimulated by both the phytohormones like abscisic acid and ethylene. But on the other hand, auxin and cytokinin retard senescence. So both are antagonistic activity. Then nitrogen deficiency increases the senescence whereas nitrogen supply retards the senescence. So if the nitrogen deficiency is there, then automatically plant will be mature. That means senescence, they will dry. But if you are supplying nitrogen again, it is retard senescence. High temperature accelerates senescence, but low temperature retards senescence. Senescence is rapid in dark than light. The same way, in the water, stress lead to the accumulation of abscisic acid, also leading the senescence. Now we are going to discuss about another concept. It's called programmed cell death. What is programmed cell death? So programmed cell death is another important phenomena which is cause very important role. The senescence is controlled by plant by own genetic program, and the death of the plant or the plant part is consequent to senescence is called programmed cell death. So this is completely controlled by the cell. So that is called programmed cell death. So in short senescence of an individual cell, it is called PCD. PCD means programmed cell death. The proteolytic enzyme which are involving the PCD in the plant are called phytospaces. But in animals, this will be called as caspases. So nutrients and other substrates from the senescing cells and tissues are remobilized. So some of the nutrients which are present on the older leaves are moved towards the younger leaves. So whenever it is reallocated to the other parts of the plant, then for their survival, then the senescence may be occur. So it is programmed.